Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Will speak. I'll remind you that there'll be the speaker, and there'll be some announcements. There'll be a half hour social, and then some people go to brunch after that. Okay, so Jim.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Good morning. It's beautiful weather here in San Francisco. I'm not a sun bunny, and somehow I ended up in Sonoma. So, the last few times I've been talking about emptiness, and I kind of felt that that my presentation had become a little abstract. So I'd like to come at the discussion from a different direction today and bring it down to a more experiential level. And the way I'm going to do that is by using a model of Buddhist practice, which I call the cultivation model. There's a lot of different metaphors that are used in Buddhist practice for achieving the goal of Buddhahood or awakening or whatever you want to call it. One of the models is awakening, purification, but today I'd like to use this idea of cultivation. I found the understanding of Buddhist practice as a kind of cultivation very helpful, because it brings me back to experiences that I've had and that I can relate to, very ordinary experiences that I've had. And what it shows me is that the consciousness of the Buddha wasn't different from the consciousness that I have or that you have or that everybody has. But the difference, in a sense, you can think of the difference as one of degree rather than of kind. This will become clearer. But if there are questions about this, please feel free to ask. The cultivation idea is that we have certain understandings and experiences within us, and those understandings and experiences are referred to as our Buddha nature. And our Buddha nature is like a seed in our consciousness. And through the practice of Buddhism, you can cultivate the ground that will allow this seed to grow, flourish, and blossom. So that every sentient being in existence has this Buddha nature, this seed of Buddha consciousness. And so, in a way, it's a very optimistic view of Buddhist practice. So, it also it allows us to relate to enlightenment and those kinds of things, not necessarily as an all or nothing thing. There are degrees of enlightenment, so that it's not a pass-fail course. And I think that's important, because sometimes the examples given of enlightenment and compassion, the ideal of the Buddha, the ideal of the Bodhisattva, seem very, very remote from our own lives. And so it seems sometimes that it's very, how will I ever function like Kuan Yin? How will I ever, it seems so distant and so remote that it's hard for us to imagine. But if we bring it back to that idea of a seed, we can relate to actual experiences that we've had in our lives and say, oh yes, that's what it means. I've been rereading the Book of the Numerical Sayings, and one of my favorite sutras in the Book of the Numerical Sayings is called the Finger Snap Sutra. And and it's very, very short. And in the sutra, the Buddha says, if even for the duration of a finger snap, someone has the thought of goodwill for others, then they have practiced, they have followed the path, they are part of the Sangha, part of the Dharma. So even if for the duration of a finger snap, then one's life is not wasted. One's life has had a function and a purpose. So how much more so for those of us who have done it for more than a finger snap. But that's what I mean by thinking of it in terms of degrees, rather than absolutes. Like that either you're enlightened or you're unenlightened. It's more like moments of awakening, finger snaps of awakening. And then these it's a kind of an ebb and flow. There's an ebb and flow, a rhythm to this blossoming of Buddha nature. It's my personal feeling that many people have great awakening. In Buddhism, great awakening, you can think of it as having two facets: a wisdom facet and a heart facet. And the wisdom facet is insight into emptiness and dependent origination, and the heart facet is being able to function from the understanding of compassion in the world. It's my belief that many people have this great awakening, but there are very, very few who can communicate to others what they can do in order to cultivate this seed of wisdom and the seed of compassion, so that they also can move in that direction. When awakening happens spontaneously, it's sort of like, wow, and I think of a lot of saints and sages down through the centuries as sort of being in this position of residing in that arena, but not being very clear about how to tell you and me how to take steps, so that we can cultivate that seed of compassion and that seed of wisdom. And the Buddha was extraordinary in his capacity and ability to respond to people and say, this is what you can do. That there are specific things you can do in order so that you can move in that direction. And in some ways, the story of the Buddha, he sits beneath the Bodhi tree and he awakens, one morning, thousands of years ago. And his first inclination was to reside in the wonder and serenity of that awakening and go off to the Himalayas. So, incidentally, that would have been culturally sanctioned at that time. That would not have been that would have been recognized as something that someone in that position would do. And then he, after some time, it varies depending on the sutra, but say a few days, he decided to attempt to teach others how to awaken, or how to follow the path to awakening. So that moment when he decides to try and teach others, in some ways I consider that almost more important than the moment where he awakened. I mean, of course the two are related, but that second moment, that's the turning of the wheel of the law. That's the moment where the teaching flowed out into the world. So it's a wonderful moment. There's several stories about one story is two merchants were passing by the tree, where there he was sitting serene, calm. They were very attracted by the presence of that awakening, and the Buddha, told them that he had awakened, and they said, well, you must teach others, and he said, well, it's kind of difficult. I'm not sure that people will understand, And they had this discussion with him, and he said, okay, I'll try, so that's one sutra. Another sutra has where he's sitting under the tree, and he's awakened, and he's residing in his vastness and serenity, and a woman comes up and gives him some food, is attracted once again by that serenity and that peace, offers him some food. And just that gesture of offering him some food awakened in him that sense of gratitude for the rest of existence and stimulated him to want to teach others. So it's interesting that the way those stories depicted it was like other people saying to him, like, well, we would like to understand this also, and that gesture of connectedness, like, led to him wanting to teach others. So, what kind of experiences am I talking about? That are the experiences which are considered like the seed of Buddha nature. Well, one of the experiences is love. Okay? So the experience of love. But in the Buddhist tradition, the experience of love is defined as wanting others to be well, happy, and content. That's very interesting in and of itself, because it defines love very differently from the way love is depicted, say, in popular literature and song, where you're kind of head over heels and sort of nuts. I mean, it's nice being nuts like that, but it's a different emphasis, in the Buddhist tradition. But the Buddhist tradition says when you want someone else to be content, when you want someone else to be happy, that's love. That's what your consciousness is manifesting at that time. Now, if you think of this as a seed, for most of us, that capacity to feel that way toward others is extremely constricted. It's a little tiny sprout. So, it arises spontaneously, for people that you feel very close to, and people you're very fond of, and very rapidly the capacity to express that diminishes. So it's difficult for that to arise with strangers. It's difficult for that to arise with people you dislike, and on and on. So it's very confined, very hemmed in, that capacity. But that capacity to want others to be well, happy, and content can be cultivated and enlarged step by step by step by step until eventually it embraces all sentient existence. All right? So, the core understanding, awakening of the Buddha, was the interdependence of all things. So all of these experiences that I'm going to talk about are expressions of relationship, of the truth of relationship. So we want someone to be well, happy, and content when we feel very strongly connected to them. Then that feeling arises. So the experience of connectedness is profoundly blissful. In its unlimited sense. Once again, because it's so, the seed has just begun to sprout in our own consciousness, we only get like a touch of that feeling of wonder and contentment that can arise from feeling that way for someone else. But once again, all of these experiences lead to that core understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. So, are there questions about this or comments? Does that make sense? So another experience is compassion. So in the Buddhist tradition, compassion is defined as wanting others to be free from suffering. So when you have that inclination for someone else, that you want them to be free from their suffering, that is the experience of compassion. That's what Buddhism means by compassion. Once again, it's interesting to consider these meanings, because wanting someone else to be free from suffering, it's not that sentimental view of compassion. or that that watered down sense of compassion that is often expressed. It's when you feel that way towards someone else. There's a large overlap between love and compassion, obviously, but my experience has been that compassion is a little broader in this sense. That when I read a newspaper and I see that people are suffering, say, in a war-ravaged area, that sense of wanting them to be free from their suffering spontaneously arises, even if I don't know them, even if I don't have a clear understanding of the historical roots to the conflict. Expressing love, wanting people to be free, wanting them to be well and content and happy, doesn't happen so quickly. This may vary from person to person, but I'm just talking about my personal experience. The compassion seems to be broader in scope, spontaneously broader in scope. So the understanding of compassion as wanting others to be free from suffering connects compassion to the first noble truth of Buddhism. That, and the first noble truth is that people are suffering. And the third noble truth is that it is possible to bring about the cessation of suffering. The primary means whereby the cessation of suffering is brought about is awakening to the interconnectedness of all things. Right? So that when that sense of separation falls away, then that sense of suffering vanishes. So this that's why compassion occupies such a central place within the Buddhist tradition. The way compassion is defined as wanting others to be free from suffering hooks it in directly to the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. Does that make sense? Comments? Questions? So what I'm getting at is that if you think of a Buddha, the consciousness of a Buddha you could think of as someone who wants others to be free from suffering all the time. That's their normal state of consciousness, right?
Could you clarify what you mean about watered down compassion?
Oh, well, let's see, watered down compassion. Well, what I really mean is kind of like clumsy compassion. So in the sense that
would it be the difference between sympathy and empathy? Where sympathy, you kind of feel sorry for somebody's misfortune, but empathy, you see the connection, the connection so much you're actually feeling the misfortune.
Yes, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. For example, that capacity for empathy, we've all had the experience, something like this. You're in a room and a kid runs into the room and bangs their head on the table and everyone in the room goes, oof! It's like at that moment there's no separation. I mean, you really feel what that little kid is feeling, when they... And by watered down compassion, I mean compassion that doesn't have that sense, that deep sense of connectedness to it. It's still kind of cerebral and intellectual. It's not fully residing in the heart. And also, what I meant by clumsy compassion was, people who are sorry that their friend is an alcoholic and they're suffering, so they go out and buy them some more booze. Well, you'd be surprised how often that's not just an abstract consideration. Compassion without wisdom can result in that, in that kind of activity, which isn't really constructive. I like to say that compassion has no form. In the sense that sentimental compassion is, or watered down compassion is the idea that you respond to everyone's stated need. I want, so okay, I'll provide that, because I'm a caring person. So true compassion has a broader sense of what causes suffering. That the suffering the person is engaged in has causes. And so what it focuses on is the causal nexus that brings that suffering into actuality. And so compassion might be reaching out and doing what somebody needs or has expressed as their need. It might also be saying, no, I'm not going to do that for you, because I think that would not be constructive. That makes compassion, the expression of compassion, you have to throw back on yourself. It's a state of heart and mind. So when I say compassion has no form, that means that one has to do introspection, to understand where one's coming from. So it takes some meditation.
Yeah, I appreciated your distinction that Buddha nature is not a path. So of course, when it comes to certain politicians, I believe I'm getting very much a D minus. I have a hard time maintaining any stability and lack of compassion. And I wonder if there's a Buddhist framework for dealing with American politics.
Or any politics. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
The problem, my response is that the usual obstacle to expressing love or compassion to those we dislike is that we feel that expressing compassion to someone is approving of them. The two attitudes are intimately mixed, and so it creates an obstacle to the expression of compassion. The antidote to that is to say, even though I disapprove of what you're doing, I still wish that your life was free from suffering. So is to consciously distinguish and focus on what it is that you're wishing. When that, for example, in taking a course in the cultivation of compassion, the expressing compassion or love to difficult people, enemies, that's a very common obstacle. So usually a phrase is added to the contemplation. It's roughly like what I just said. How do you express compassion toward destructive people? So you add to the contemplation, bringing harm to no one, may you be free from suffering. And that helps you focus on what it is. Is that helpful?
That's helpful.
Okay. Was there? I thought I saw. Yeah. Okay.
I just want to say that I always thought that meditation of compassion for people were difficult to deal with. Had a utilitarian value would be sort of manipulative because I'm thinking of a woman I know who's really mean, and her meanness comes from some internal suffering. So it's very practical for me to pray for her relief of her suffering, because if she ever was relieved from that, she wouldn't be mean. So I feel myself being very manipulative, or in my metta stories of people who I'll never meet even who are like that, Senator Helms may be free from suffering.
Yeah.
Maybe if he is, he wouldn't be so mean,
Yes.
Judgmental.
Along the politics line, isn't it like more Buddhists say to work for Ralph Nader than First George
I tend to shy away from specific platforms of politicians when I give a talk, because it tends to suck the energy off into, into that. But tentatively, I would say there's a long history in Buddhism of being, politically active, or it would certainly be consistent with strands of Buddhist history to do something like that. Another experience that we all share is sympathetic joy. And sympathetic joy is being happy at other people's successes. And once again, just like as in love and in compassion, these this wisdom of sympathetic joy is for most of us extremely constricted, very, very limited. We lack the ability to be happy at most other people's successes. Great, I'm glad you got a new car. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you got that promotion. Great. I haven't had a promotion in years, but I'm happy you got a promotion. This kind of, Sun Sneem, my teacher called this checking mind. Checking. That we're always engaged in this sort of, where I am in relation to somebody else's successes and material wealth. But for close friends, it's really interesting to observe that we feel very happy when they get what they want. Especially if they've worked very hard for it. Then we want to go to the celebration, or we want to take them out to dinner, or we want to honor that. Once again, this is an expression of connectedness. Love, compassion, sympathetic joy. A facet of the central understanding of the interconnectedness of us all. Yeah?
I have a question about that very one, because I just came from a trip in which I got to see a cousin of mine, much older now, but his father was 94, died somewhat recently, and left him after a lifetime of very modest needs, an enormous amount of money. And he immediately went out and did the things that one does with enormous amount of money, including treating me to a very lovely meal and stuff like that. And I was feeling this incredible resonance of joy for him, because I'd always known him in a situation of somewhat modest. And then I monitored inside myself, and I could feel this joy. But there was a little piece of me somewhere, and I didn't want to just close down that little piece. I wanted to just acknowledge that that was in me, and at the same time, I could really feel this powerful feeling. And after a bit of time, that went away.
Yeah.
And I was a little surprised that it went away. But I noticed that, and it just seems to me that the way through for somebody like me is not to close down and not to deny it, not to pretend it's not there, but to allow it to be there in whatever way it is, and to give my energy to the part of me that is more, feeling more of that joy, but not in any way pretending or denying or moving away from any of those other things.
That's been my own experience too, is to acknowledge that. So it's like, I'm using the model of cultivation here. So let's take music. Anyone who's developed some facility at a musical instrument knows that there's this mind arises which is reluctant to practice, which wants to do something else, anything else, rather than do those scales again, that kind of mind appears, that resentful mind, or it's the same kind of thing, it seems to me the antidote to that is say, oh, well, okay, that's how I feel, but I'm going to do my scales now. Okay, yeah, that resentment is there, but it's, most of our motivation and our relationship to people is complicated and mixed. But what I'm trying to focus in now are those specific mental states of the heart, which arise out of that sense of connectedness. If those are cultivated, then that's the presence of Buddha nature, within us. See, when when we function in the world from that sense of connectedness, either out of love, compassion, sympathetic joy, then we're a Buddha. Then we're a Buddha. We're an enlightened presence in the world. When we don't function from that place, then we're not. See, there's no enlightened being. There's only enlightened activity. So there's no such thing as an enlightened being. It's only enlightenment in relationship. That's the truth.
I have two comments, and one is kind of goofy. I'll give you the first one. I think like a lot of people, I spend a lot of time cultivating the opposite of compassion toward people. And I'm struck by the amount of energy I put into expressing in my mind contempt or even hatred or disgust at other people. And one of the since we've been doing the meditations over the last year or so, I've been like occasionally working on them, particularly with respect to people from work. And I've just kind of like, it is really a matter like of a process. It's like slowly like reversing your attitude about other people. But it does change things when you think, oh yes, I do want to feel compassion. I do want that person to be successful and happy, relieved of suffering in his or her life. Even if I go into work, the next day and have an argument with that person, I've begun to like change the framework. It's not just this constant stream of negativity going out of me, which is helping me. The goofy thing is about ants in my apartment, which I started saying that, do they count? In the winter, they were driving me crazy because I'd go in to shave in the morning, and there they'd be like going around the sink and whatnot. And my first impulse was to like squash them and feel a lot of pleasure in that. And now I'm taking them as like a little reminder, as a little gift of enlightenment, to let them go, to let them be, and to just like remind that like all these sentient beings, all these things, even those things which I can hardly understand to be truly sentient, are part of the larger universe, and I'm connected with them. They might be my grandmother or something like that. So I giggle when I do that, but and I also think I'm going to get 4,000 years of bad karma or something like that.
Well, I know those situations. Existence is complicated. The Dalai Lama was asked what he would do if a mosquito landed on him to bite him, and he said, to me, situations like that arise, and if you're stuck in a formula, then existence will prove more complicated than any formula you can come up with. But that doesn't mean that the formula is worthless. It just means that situations appear that are sort of outside the scope, of any formula. But there's a direction. Now, this is a path. This is a cultivation. And what I've personally discovered is that as you move down this path, those kinds of situations begin to appear less and less. And it's good, incidentally, that a little bell rings, before you impulsively, stomp on something. Maybe you don't have to. People who do it unthinkingly, can create a lot of suffering. It's those kinds of ethical questions are. The reason they're troublesome is that if you have an open mind, you can really see both sides. And so they don't fall squarely into the good group or the bad group. I have friends who are what I would call militant vegetarians, and anti-vivisectionists. I suspect that they've been involved in proactive activities, on this part, But when I think about vivisection or lab animals, the thing that disturbs me about it is the lack of gratitude for all that those animals have given us. Wouldn't it be nice if there was one day set aside in which those animals which have sacrificed so much were honored? And said thank you to, something like that. It's that idea that of that kind of indifference or disposability, which makes me feel uneasy. Like your story about the ants doesn't make me feel uneasy because there's a relationship there and there's some kind of understanding of consequences and weighing of that kind of thing. So. Does that make sense, or the difference?
There's another aspect to it, though. I had a loft where I decided not to kill cockroaches, and then all the cockroaches in the building came to my loft. And all my neighbors had no cockroaches, because they recognized that I was thinking about it.
I believe that. Okay, moving along. Another experience is what is equanimity. Equanimity is the feeling of serenity and peace. Equanimity is the feeling of serenity and peace, no matter what conditions arise. The example I'd like to give of equanimity is the sound of a bell. When the sound of a bell comes to an end, that mental state that we have when the bell ceases is equanimity. That's what equanimity means. Okay? It's important to distinguish equanimity from indifference. Equanimity is rooted in connectedness. Okay? Equanimity is not a lack of appreciation. We enjoyed the sound of a bell, but when the sound of a bell ends, we don't reach out and try and say, we don't resent the fact that it didn't last longer or go like that. It's just has a lot to do with acceptance, that sort of thing. When we wish for others to have that state of serenity, acceptance, and peace of mind and serenity of heart, that is an expression of equanimity mingling with love and compassion. And we've all had that experience. Say a friend of ours is very agitated about something, and so then we want them to be free from that agitation. And we may even say to our friend, I just wish you could get some distance on this. Or I just wish you could, let that go. That happened a year ago, or that happened 6 months ago. That's an expression of wanting others to have that sense of equanimity and peace. So that is another seed of Buddha nature, or it is a facet of the seed of Buddha nature. There is also the facet of wisdom, and the facet of wisdom is the experiences of wisdom in the sense of emptiness are a little more amorphous. I just went through the four immeasurables and connected them to experiences that we can all recognize and all have. The experiences of emptiness, I'm convinced, are just as frequent in people, but they're much less easily recognized. So the sense of emptiness is the experience of emptiness happens when people do not feel separated from what they are experiencing. So that's what emptiness means. That there's no sense of separation. So emptiness means emptiness of self, emptiness of a separately existing entity. So this can happen when you're having a perfect afternoon with a good friend. There's no separation between you and your friend. The afternoon has gone very, very smooth, no contention, easy conversation, wonderful time. Yeah, right? So, and I think the reason that often it is missed is because it can be so simple. It's subtle. That experience is subtle. It's hard to identify the parameters of it. People often have this kind of experience in nature, or they report this kind of experience in nature. Many people have this kind of experience with music, like that at a concert or even in their own home. So when that experience manifests, that is the seed of Buddha nature sprouting. That is. But you see, in all of these cases, in the case of in these 5 cases of wisdom, equanimity, sympathetic joy, compassion, and love, most people do not realize that can be cultivated. That understanding can be cultivated, and that's the sad thing. Unaware that can be cultivated, they let that experience go, and it fades into a memory. Or even the memory fades. Wisdom can be cultivated through meditation. So that spaciousness of mind that arises in meditation creates the conditions for that falling away of separateness in daily life. It can also be that sense of wisdom can be cultivated in certain practices that have arisen in a Buddhist context, which have become almost their own separate tradition. Let me give an example. It's like a tea ceremony is a good example of this. So. Tea ceremony is making a cup of tea is a very ordinary activity. If, however, you ceremonially frame making a cup of tea, so that all that is going on is making that cup of tea, and nothing else is happening. In the room, everybody who is involved is simply making a cup of tea. It's quite amazing. That sense of separation will fall away. Tea ceremony is probably the best example that I know of this kind of practice, which attracts so many people. And I believe that it's so attractive because there's that. It's structured to elicit that sense of non-separation, which is profoundly blissful. Even in a tiny dose, it might be a tiny dose of bliss, but it's very attractive. So the other aspect about tea ceremony is it's like conjuration. So you bring the water, the heat, the tea, the water boils, and voila, you have a cup of tea. It's like what is being demonstrated to you is the creatively unfolding aspect of existence. That everything is constantly being transformed and recreated, regenerated. And so, as a metaphor for for Buddha nature as the constant creative unfolding of existence, tea ceremony is really wonderful. Very, very precise, very accurate. I'm convinced that that's why there's such a long history of a connection between Buddhism and tea ceremony for many, many, many centuries. That as a framed ceremony, it draws our attention to that particular aspect of Buddha nature as creativity, and sets up conditions for the experience of non-separateness. But there are many other examples. The the subtlety of the experience of transcendent wisdom puts people in a position of trying to access it by what I call framing, ceremonially framing a situation so that it will draw one's attention to its presence. Yeah. The idea is that these forms or ways or paths can create conditions for our awareness of the presence of transcendental wisdom, but we need to draw our attention to it. Otherwise, the subtlety of the experience will elude us, and we'll miss it. Does that make sense? What I just said. So it's like when I was the last 2 months when I was talking about emptiness, I was saying that I was getting kind of abstract. That's one of the reasons Buddhist discussions about emptiness often get abstract so quickly. The subtlety of the experience lends itself to interpretation. And since it's kind of difficult to pin down what the experience is, it sort of stimulates discussions of, emptiness is the non-inherency of all existing things. So, true enough, it's difficult to connect a definition like that to the experience that one has. Whereas the four immeasurables, it's not so difficult. So when I say to you, you've had the experience of wanting others to be well and happy and content. I think that's true. I think everyone in this room has had that experience. But when I say to you, everyone in this room has had the experience of transcendent wisdom, you go, well, was that experience of it or wasn't it? I'm not quite sure, whether I did or not. But honestly, I really believe that everybody has had that experience. Everybody has that seed of wisdom. But it is a little amorphous. But if you go back over your experience and you think of those times when self-concern has not been paramount, then there it is, very clear. It might be just for a moment, but it might be for a whole afternoon, in which you have resided in that kind of wisdom. One of the ways you know that you've experienced it is because you'll the sense of frustration that arises when it passes. It's like, that was so nice. Why can't I be there all the time? And that brings us back to cultivation. Cultivating that sense of wisdom, cultivating that sense of the emptiness of all things, can be done in many different ways. It can be done through tea ceremony. It can be done through zazen. It can be done through, believe it or not, it can be done through analysis under proper guidance. But it is necessary to cultivate it. Otherwise, you're kind of at the mercy of spontaneous conditions, and whether or not you have good karma, to bring it forth. Yeah.
Jim, I have a dear friend whom I've known for 40 years, who is really a nice and sweet man. He was a house guest at present, but he's given to saying things like, well, the way to get rid of the drug problem is simply to lace all drugs with cyanide. And then I find it very difficult to think, well, gee, I wish you were free from that thought. Because what I really think is I'd like to hit him with a 2x4. How does one bridge? This man really does have good and nice qualities. But he also has these things which are very difficult to deal with. How do I get there from here?
Well, I would look at it as a both-and situation. That's essentially the same question that was brought up before.
Yes.
That is how I feel. But I also wish that that you were free from suffering, that you were free from hostility.
So it's really all right to acknowledge your resistance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I said to him, well, perhaps you're not taking into consideration that people arrive at drugs through a variety of means,
right,
and that some of them are in great pain, and that's how they get there. And then he just looks at me and said, well, we just get rid of them all if we just put cyanide in it.
People like that say, your friend Rush Limbaugh, other kinds of people are, the antidote to that kind of consciousness is seeing all people as equal. And for whatever reasons, they are not capable of doing that. But it is possible for us to extend that sense of love and compassion to people who are in that situation because they are suffering people. And that state of mind produces suffering.
Yes, it does.
So for them and for others as well. I'm running out of... Oh, you're welcome. I'm running out of time, but I'd like to quickly mention two more facets of Buddha nature, if that's all right with people. The next one would be forgiveness. Okay? That also is a facet of the seed of Buddha nature. Forgiveness... we've all had experiences of forgiving others, and we've had many experiences of wanting others to forgive us. So. But the reason forgiveness is important, as long as there is something in existence that you refuse to forgive, particularly if it's a personal thing, that forgiveness constricts the mind and heart. Forgiveness constricts the mind and heart.
Lack.
That's what I mean, yes. Thank you. A lack of forgiveness constricts the mind and the heart. It's very, very interesting. You can experience the heart closing down, the mind closing down. Say in meditation, if something appears which that you can't forgive, then you can feel the energy just going becoming like this hard little knot. Cultivating forgiveness creates the spaciousness of mind and heart, which allows infinite love and infinite compassion to blossom. I'm not underestimating the difficulty of cultivating forgiveness for those who've done reprehensible things. Once again, the distinction, the obstacle arises because we don't make a distinction between approval and forgiveness. So that you can forgive somebody for what they have done without approving of what they have done. That it is possible to distinguish, and that's connected to something. You don't feel gratitude for it. You either feel hostility or indifference, or the whole other range. So when gratitude blossoms in our heart, we recognize the nature of existence as a gift. Gratitude can be cultivated by becoming aware of all that has been done for us. That's how gratitude is cultivated within a Buddhist context, is step by step becoming consciously aware of all that has been given us, all that has been done for us, all that has been offered to us, all that we have taken advantage of, and how very, very little we've given back. So, when we have an understanding of the gifting nature of existence, from the sun to our parents to teachers to friends, all that has been provided to us, gratitude spontaneously arises. We feel connected to all sentient existence, and it is upon that platform of gratitude that the bodhisattva consciousness begins to arise in our minds and in our hearts. And that's a wonderful thing. And we know all of these experiences. I've just talked about 7 of them. they are blissful experiences. Bliss is extreme, but in their pure form, they are blissful. In their constricted form, they're pleasant. But they're very attractive. So we spontaneously want to be there. But we don't recognize how to move, into that arena. There are within Buddhism, there are means to cultivate that Buddha nature, and that means becoming a Buddha, and step by step becoming a Buddha. When we interact with the world out of a sense of gratitude, love, and compassion, we are a Buddha, at that moment. Not different from Shakyamuni. At that moment, Shakyamuni, you and I, same. Then habit forces move in, and we become petty, mean, or spiteful. But that's okay. That's okay. This is the model of cultivation. One of the reasons I like it is because it sets me free. Once again, it sets me free from that all or nothing. If I'm not that way every single moment, then I haven't, I'm not doing it, or I haven't done it. And the model of cultivation allows me to see myself as moving in the direction, not just this life after life after life, until all sentient beings are free from suffering. Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.